Few kingpins in the world of cartels are as dreaded as Joaquín Guzmán, better known as El Chapo. As the head honcho of the Sinaloa Cartel, at the height of his game, he was pulling in about $3 billion every year. He had a big slice of the action in Mexico's drug scene, which really shows how powerful he was. El Chapo lived it up with fancy boats, a bunch of private jets, a gun decked out with diamonds, and even a private zoo with tigers, crocodiles, and panthers. But El Chapo was more than just a clever guy in the business world. He was a tough character who made his way to the top by being pretty ruthless. It's no shocker that there was a massive $5 million reward for anyone who could help catch him. After breaking out of jail twice, his third arrest in 2016 landed him in one of the toughest U.S. prisons, a place no one has ever escaped from. Let's dive into what El Chapo's life is like now in that Supermax prison and see what's up with a guy who used to be one of the most feared people around. El Chapo was born in a tiny village called La Tuna in Sinaloa, Mexico, back in 1957. He grew up in a poor family, struggling to make ends meet. The area he lived in had a long history of drug farming, especially marijuana and opium poppies. This environment shaped young Joaquin, and he started helping his dad grow marijuana when he was just a kid. This early start in the drug trade paved the way for his future in the business. By the late 1970s, El Chapo was working with Hector Luis Palma Salazar, who was becoming a big name in the drug world. His big break came in the mid-1980s when he began working for Miguel Ángel Felix Gallardo, also known as El Padrino or the Godfather. Gallardo led the powerful Guadalajara cartel, and under his guidance, El Chapo learned all the tricks of the trade, including how to handle logistics and smuggling routes. This partnership helped him gain crucial experience and connections. When Gallardo got arrested in 1989, there was a power struggle in the drug world. El Chapo took advantage of this and formed the Sinaloa Cartel with other traffickers. His leadership and strategic mind quickly made the Sinaloa Cartel one of the most powerful and influential drug organizations in the world. They controlled major smuggling routes and were heavily involved in moving cocaine, marijuana, and heroin into the United States. El Chapo's Sinaloa Cartel became known for its clever use of tunnels to smuggle drugs across the U.S.-Mexico border. These tunnels were high-tech. Some even had rail tracks and ventilation systems, allowing them to move large amounts of drugs secretly and efficiently. The cartel also had advanced communication networks and heavily armed guards to keep control and expand their influence. In 1993, El Chapo was caught in Guatemala and sent back to Mexico, where he got a 20-year prison sentence for drug trafficking and other crimes. But he didn't stay locked up for long. In 2001, El Chapo escaped from a maximum security prison by hiding in a laundry cart, allegedly with the help of bribed prison officials. This escape added to his notorious reputation as a master escape artist. After years on the run, El Chapo was nabbed again in 2014. This time they put him in another maximum security prison in Mexico. But in 2015, he escaped again. His crew dug a mile-long tunnel right to the shower in his cell. This tunnel even had lights, ventilation, and a motorcycle on rails. Talk about being resourceful. El Chapo's career was full of strategic moves, using corruption and clever smuggling techniques to build one of the most powerful drug cartels ever. His repeated escapes and captures show just how tough it is for law enforcement to fight organized crime on such a big scale. Then on January 8, 2016, El Chapo was caught again after a dramatic operation in Los Mochis, Sinaloa, Mexico. The Mexican Marines found a huge stash of weapons and 2 armored cars at his hideout. He tried to escape through another tunnel, but was caught by the federal police after they got an alert about a stolen car he had taken at gunpoint. When they caught him, he even tried to bribe the cops, but they didn't take the bait and handed him over to the Marines. On January 19, 2017, El Chapo was extradited to the United States to face many charges. The Mexican government made sure everything was legal and that his rights were considered before sending him over. Once he arrived in the U.S., they put him in the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York. This extradition was a big deal for El Chapo, who had always managed to avoid permanent capture. Reports said he seemed scared and anxious, knowing that escaping again would be nearly impossible. Moving to the U.S., with its tougher judicial system and maximum security conditions, marked the end of his freedom and control. El Chapo's trial kicked off in November 2018 in New York. The security around the trial was super tight. They had closed sessions for picking the jury and used anonymous jurors to keep them safe. The trial had testimonies from 56 people, including former partners and law enforcement agents, who talked about his big drug operations and ruthless methods. On February 12, 2019, El Chapo was found guilty of all charges, like drug trafficking, illegal gun use, and money laundering. Then on July 17, 2019, he got sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years. He was also ordered to give up $12.6 billion. This harsh sentence showed how serious his crimes were and his huge impact on drug trafficking in the U.S. and Mexico. El Chapo was sent to ADX Florence, known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, the most secure prison in the U.S. This place is designed for the most dangerous and escape-prone inmates. It's in a remote part of Colorado, surrounded by layers of razor wire, gun towers, and high-tech surveillance systems with motion and pressure sensors. Escaping from here is nearly impossible. El Chapo now shares ADX Florence with some of the most infamous criminals in the world, like the Unabomber, Ted Krasinski, the 1993 World Trade Center bomber, Ramzi Youssef, and Zacarias Moussaoui, a conspirator in the 9/11 attacks. The prison's population includes inmates who have committed severe crimes or have a violent history in prison. But not everyone at ADX Florence is a major criminal. Some are there because they caused problems in other prisons, like attacking other inmates or guards. No matter why they're there, everyone deals with the same tough conditions. Each inmate spends almost the entire day in a tiny cell, 7 by 12 feet. They have a shower that works on a timer to stop flooding and a steel unit that has a toilet, sink, and a mirror all in one. The showers only come on 3 times a week. Sleeping isn't any better with a bed that's just a concrete slab with a thin mattress and a blanket. Comfort isn't really a thing at ADX Florence. All the furniture is made of concrete, and the toilet is fixed to the floor so inmates can't turn it into a weapon. Meals are delivered right to their cells through small doors, and they eat alone, not able to talk to others. Being alone is the norm here, with little break from the isolation. There's a library where they can get books and magazines, which is a rare escape from their concrete cells. Phone calls are limited to 15 minutes a month. In most other prisons, inmates can talk to their families every day, even if it's monitored. At ADX, they can have visits up to 5 times a month, but each visit needs to be approved, and they're closely watched during these visits. While solitary confinement is a punishment in most places, it's standard at ADX Florence. Walking through its halls is eerie. Robert Hood, who used to be a warden at ADX Florence, once described the place as not built for humanity and compared it to hell, pointing out the extreme isolation and lack of human contact for the inmates. For the first 3 years inside ADX, inmates can't talk to others. They get 1 hour of recreation time alone, either in an empty cell with a pull-up bar or in a caged pen outside. After 3 years, if they behave well, they might get to spend that hour talking to other inmates. In their last year, they get 4 hours of free time each day and can eat with other prisoners. But El Chapo won't get those privileges. He's in for life at the ADX Florence. Since 2022, he's been there for 3 years without much human contact, except for brief interactions with the guards. He's in Range 13, a part of the prison for the most dangerous inmates. He doesn't even get a regular shower. They wash him with a hose because he once escaped through a tunnel under his shower in another prison. El Chapo's legal team is fighting back, saying the harsh conditions, like the constant lights and loud air conditioning, are causing him serious mental harm. They argue that his punishment isn't just imprisonment, it's basically torture. At the same time, El Chapo's wife, Emma, is speaking out for better treatment. She says the severe isolation and lack of natural light are not only harsh, but also inhumane. His physical health is suffering too. Instead of getting proper dental care, his teeth are just pulled out when there are problems. This whole thing makes you think about a big question. How much suffering is okay, even for the toughest criminals? Inside ADX Florence, where El Chapo is, things are pretty severe. There are stories about inmates hurting themselves because they just can't handle the stress and loneliness. Some even use whatever they can find, like razors or bits of glass. Big human rights groups like Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International have spoken up about it. They say the conditions at ADX Florence are like torture, something even the United Nations has criticized, especially how they keep inmates alone for so long. The UN's expert on torture wants to stop solitary confinement that goes over 15 days because it's just too damaging. There have been many lawsuits against ADX Florence, saying it violates human rights. These lawsuits have shown that the mental health care there is poor, and that long-term isolation makes psychiatric problems worse. Even though there have been some changes after legal settlements, people still debate if these changes are enough. The COVID-19 pandemic made things even worse. Almost all visits, including from lawyers, were stopped, increasing the isolation for inmates. This has become a key issue in El Chapo's ongoing legal battles. While it's unclear how much contact he now has with the outside world, one thing is certain: his days of escaping are over. Unless his appeals work, he'll spend the rest of his life in America's most secure prison. Ray Donovan, a top DEA agent, has spoken out about El Chapo's prison conditions, saying they are fair given the seriousness of his crimes. Donovan believes that these strict measures are necessary to stop El Chapo from running his cartel or planning another escape. He thinks that the tough restrictions on El Chapo are a form of justice for his many victims. This brings up a big question. Should El Chapo or anyone else in prison get better treatment no matter what they've done? People have a lot of different thoughts on this, mixing up ideas of justice, punishment, and human rights. What's your take? The debate is ongoing, with plenty of folks weighing in on what they think is fair when it comes to how prisoners are treated.